Hi again, everybody. For those that don't know, my name is Bridie McDade. I am one of the student mentors based up in Townsville, and as an online student, I try and help out fellow online students. This is a part of a couple of videos that I have made at request of you guys to try and break down a big assessment. We're kind of at the stage already where we've filled out our calendar, we kind of know our non-negotiable dates, we know our due dates, we know when our wedding is, we know when our work needs to be on that Tuesday and Thursday, but how can we turn all that into weekly tasks? How can we break down and really understand an assessment in front of us? This one is about essays. Essays freak me. Like, they're normally worth like 40 to 60, 70% of your mark. They're normally quite long at university level, like 2,000, 3,000 words. Sometimes there's a PowerPoint included on them. And obviously referencing is a big issue. So what I wanted to kind of work on and just kind of get you to understand is when you first log in and you first say, oh my God, I have to write 2,000 words, a lot of people just click off and they're like, no, I'll watch a lecture. I'm not even gonna look at it. And then kind of a week goes past and maybe 2 weeks goes past and they might start looking at a resource, but then they maybe get a bit scared because it's overwhelming and they need 6 resources. And how am I going to find 6 resources? Or I've had a time where I needed 15 resources and I can barely even find one and I'm not searching the right topics. And you just kind of, you get a little bit unmotivated, which is completely fair enough. So setting up kind of goals or plans, deconstructing the assessment will make it much easier. I am working from this little example, which is literally just coming from an email that I just sent to one of you guys that was asking about how they could start deconstructing an essay that they have due and how they could kind of start setting out time frames. They know their end goal, they know when something's due, and how can they kind of work that backwards. So kind of a couple of parts here. Kind of like an intro and understanding, kind of then going into a research. You've got breakdown, all that kind of a thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to waffle. I'm just going to chit chat. I've made a couple of Post-it notes. This is how I used to do it when I was doing a written diary. I now use an online diary, like an online calendar that I can use on my laptop and my work computer and my phone, and it's always there. If my bag was too small, I couldn't take it. If I was traveling, then that was another thing I had to carry. Whereas now it's always on my phone. And if I'm not on my phone, I'm actually at work, I can always bring it up and look at it. But this is how I used to do it. I would break it down into a whole heap of Post-it notes. And that would kind of be like my weekly goal. Or it might not be weekly, you might need to do 2 of these a week. And popping that into Monday of your diary, or if you work on Monday and you've got Tuesday as your study day, or Tuesday afternoon is your study day and you only really have Thursday afternoon, kind of popping one of these as your kind of goal, you're kind of tracking towards, and makes it much easier. First one, I'm going to flip this around so you can actually read these. Bear with me while I do that. Turn off the mirror, flip me around. First one is just straight up understanding the assignment. This for me is can be the most daunting and demotivating part. You obviously need to understand the point, understand the essay question. Is it discuss? Is it analyze? All that kind of thing, all those kind of things that we learned in high school. What is the point? If you struggle with that, you've got ALC. They can kind of help you pick out those main words from like your topic sentence or your question. Downloading the marking rubric and having a look through that. That will point you into how many resources you need, where you could lose marks, where you want to pick up marks. Resources is a big one for me. If I haven't got enough resources, I will automatically lose points. It's silly to me. I want to make sure I've got that minimum resource. So having an awareness of that, because that will differ. For example, if on a 6 resource is going to differ how much research time I needed compared to that one where I had 15 resources that I needed. And they were obviously current. They were all to be articles. I wasn't meant to use textbooks or anything like that. So I needed at least 15 and they all had to be good ones. So that I ended up having like nearly, I think it was like 22, I think. But like that's a lot of resources compared to one that maybe only has 6. A lot of the time there'll be an info video. If there is, I would definitely recommend at the end of the term popping that in the feedback that you appreciated that. If it was missing, I would definitely recommend popping in there that it was missing. You should have an info video. Sometimes that's released kind of like in a Zoom session closer to. They might do like breaking down. I'll show you what that looks like just in case you haven't got an info video. If I bring up this was a this was just in, what unit was this? Outward Bound. So this is one I just did in my summer semester. And down in here, it was actually hosted by the ALC. They did extra Zooms closer to, so this was actually close to the due date. They did an extra one and an extra one. And then there was also, they broke down, a PowerPoint was a part of that essay. So they broke down the PowerPoint as a separate topic. You were able to jump in and ask questions because it was a live Zoom. And then obviously you could ask questions on the forum. That was a little bit closer to kind of on the back end. We'll come back to that. But if you don't have an info video, if you don't have that available, I'll show you what one, what unit have I got that's got one? I think my Med Surge had one. Oh, wrong button, sorry. I want to jump in on Moodle. I think it had one, pretty sure. It did for the portfolio maybe. Oh no, sorry. Let me find it. I'll show you what it looks like. I think it might have been in this one for the portfolio. Yeah, it was. In this here with the portfolio, they said here, please, for further information, please see our assessment video. So they actually made, I think it was about a 20-minute long video, giving you a couple of hints and tips on what they were looking for. And that was done right there at the start. That's term one. So before this unit has even opened, I can understand. They've actually walked through what they're wanting, that kind of a thing, giving a couple of hints and tips. Whereas the previous subject, I did it in semester 3, that was done by ALC and that was live and that was at the end. So some kind of info video. If you don't have one, maybe reach out and suggest one to your lecturer, or suggest those kind of ALCs or that kind of Zoom session closer to. That's kind of what you want to do when you're understanding at the start. Then you want to move into your research phase. This, for me, takes the longest. I struggle with this. I'm used to kind of reinterpreting a textbook and then popping that into an essay. Whereas now I have to find multiple resources. They all have to be current, all that kind of a thing. So people can struggle with this. Obviously, you have ALC, the library, that kind of people. You can pop in there and they can help you, teach you a couple more tips and tricks about researching, but that can be the longest part. I can get quite stuck. I can kind of dedicate, a whole Sunday afternoon just to one assignment and kind of come away with maybe like 2 really good ones. I find a whole heap of similar information or information for overseas, over some great evidence, some great research over in Canada or America, but not really relevant to Australia or not really relevant to the population that I'm looking for, whether it's in one about people, for example, barriers to accessing healthcare. Maybe that's not quite relevant to the people that I'm talking about. You can learn that it's tricky. I still struggle with it, but you can learn how to use better search words to research, to kind of make the most of your time. ALC can help you out with that. Other peers can, that kind of a thing. I've just written on here, you want to obviously obtain your resources. That's part of the research. You want to start making a list. So I start actually writing out my reference list, and then Moodle resources are another good one. If you're struggling to find resources, if you log into Moodle, sometimes they'll actually give you a couple. So they might say that this is a guideline that we use. This is what we've learned about. This is for example, the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Standards. There are a couple of like go-to ones. And then from that, you'll see that research has gone into that. So you can kind of start going off on tangents. Then you kind of move into a drafting stage. So I normally pop that as a goal of mine. So a few weeks out, I pop that. I want to start my draft. I've already done the research. I already understand. That can kind of be done for me in one afternoon. Sometimes it takes people longer to understand it. Sometimes they need help. They need to pop into ALC, that kind of a thing. The research for me does take a while, 2 days, 3 days, sometimes a whole week if I'm doing it, chipping away at it. Then I kind of move into a draft stage. So I want to pop down my main ideas So if there's a couple of questions in there, the main ideas, my main points, and then I want to pop in my main resources, those kind of guidelines that I want to use, the main couple of resources that I want to use, and then the rest can kind of be like filler resources if I haven't found too many yet. And then I want to start creating a flow. So that's kind of like the third part for me when I'm breaking down an essay. Then sometimes it can start getting overwhelming, and this is kind of how my flow goes. I'm kind of quite strict at the start of the term, and then I kind of, something else has distracted me because I've started my essay assignment, but then I've had to go do a quiz, or work has picked up and I've had to go do that, or I've just come back from a holiday. Whatever it is, I normally kind of start going off track from an essay. It always happens for me. So that's where I really go back to break down. This is kind of my solutions if you start kind of getting lost at this stage after you've kind of started, even if only opening up and creating the titles of like intro and that kind of thing. This is where I really start breaking it down. I'll start with this one, breaking it down. 2,000 words sounds like a lot. 3,000 words sounds like a lot. So they should go through this in the info video. ALC should go through this in Zoom sessions. If not, start doing it yourself, start getting in the habit. Most of us were taught this in high school. If not, definitely pop into ALC to kind of get a refresher on it, especially if you're returning back as a mature age student, as a lot of us are. You want to break things down into an intro and into your couple of paragraphs and into an outro. And that's where these kind of main points are going to come back in. That's how you'll start really making your draft. If you turn 2,000 words into, say, a 150 and a 150 intro and outro, that's 300 words gone. You only need to do 1/7. If you've got 3 main topics to discuss, say the history of healthcare, barriers to healthcare, and future strategies, that's 3 topics that maybe you have to discuss. You can then turn 1,700 words, divide that by 3. You only have a few hundred words then. If you then pop in your main points that, there was bad history, but history started getting better, you've broken that down into 2 sections already. If you then say, there's 3 barriers, there's 3 main barriers affecting Australia. Here's one, got to break that down, a couple hundred words. Here's a second, here's a third, even if I've just known my points with a resource next to it. And then you might come back into what are some strategies. So here's a couple of guidelines that we're now putting in place, and here's some standards that were put in place and that kind of a thing. And you'll start creating your flow. That is a lifesaver for me. If I'm on top of things, I normally try and do that at the start. From previous experience, I normally try and do this at the start. I break it down. The sooner you can do that, the easier it will seem, and the less overwhelming 2,000, 3,000 words will seem, if not more. Like, I remember at the start being like, 2,000 words, that's a lot. Now I'm like, that's not enough. I need like 5,000. Give me 5,000 word essays. If you're getting confused, if you're not understanding the question or understanding really what it's asking, or you've kind of, I find I go off on tangents. I found all this great research, all this evidence, and I've kind of gone off on a tangent, and I need to kind of reassess what was the question, what is being asked of me, am I maybe confused and I'm not understanding? Jump into ALC, obviously. So this is Academic Learning Center. I should know that. Bad student mentor, I should know that. But they're normally found in your library, and I can pop their phone number and their email down below, so it's easy for you. Forums is a great one. Moodle forums. You can literally ask your lecturer. They normally reply the next day, within 2 days. Maybe we won't on a weekend, but we'll get back to you on a Monday. And other people jump in and reply. The other one is obviously your peers. Popping them in the forum, your peers will start responding. Or if you already have a Facebook group set up, that is a great way. You can kind of be like, I'm not understanding this. What is happening? And I'll be like, you just need to explain 3 barriers. Like, here's a couple of barriers. Haven't you thought of this? Haven't you thought of that? Haven't you thought of that? And you're like, right. No, okay. Yeah, I can work with this. Then we start doing our essay. Start popping in that word, all those words. And you kind of find that once you kind of feel a bit more secure and a bit more sure of what's being asked of you, the words start coming. And the more you do essays, the more you will find that 2,000 words won't be enough. And you really have to start restricting yourself and start learning to write a bit more succinctly, so shorter sentences. Then I get to the point where I want to have an essay to review. This is kind of an extra step, but certainly if you want to start getting distinctions, high distinctions, this is kind of your aim. I don't always have time for this. I don't always have peers around me. I don't always have family members, that kind of thing. But this is definitely a really good step if you wanted to try and get some decent marks. You want to kind of have your essay at a point and early enough that you can submit it to someone else, an external agency, for review. So that means, for example, if I show you a calendar so it makes a little bit more sense. Internet, if I share this with you. So for example, I have a written assessment due here. I don't want this to be at review stage the day before, because this is normally with ALC, it's going to be a 3-day turnaround. Studiosity is sometimes 1 to 2. You might pass along to a registered nurse who might help you with references. You might go into the library. You might have to book an appointment with ALC, that kind of a thing, because obviously a whole heap of other students are going to be doing the same thing, not just for your subject, but for other units. So I normally give myself a full week, if not a little bit extra. So I'm trying to be aiming for this Wednesday the 6th or Thursday the 7th in this case, for me to kind of really have this done. I have a Zoom session here, so I know that on this day I'm going to be focused on potentially a different unit. I'm going to be focused on this Zoom session. I'm going to be trying to learn from this. So I really kind of want to have it done beforehand. This flows into another Zoom session. So this, for me, I'd really try to be having it done by the 6th, or as a goal, or I need it done on this Saturday. I need to be popping it in, because now I start limiting how much turnaround I've got. That is a really good way to progress, because even if you get to this stage and you're not finished, you're not ready, you still have a full week and you're not doing it the day before, which I can't lie, I've done that for a couple of assessments. But it keeps you on track. Having this as a goal, having this as a high distinction goal, really, I've found, sets me up, and I'm walking away with high distinctions and distinctions for my essays, and I'm not an essay person at all. So yeah, you can submit to ALC. That information will be down below. It's on their website, so just typing into Moodle, I can show you that as well if you want. But typing in ALC, and you can see that there's normally a 3-day turnaround. What else did I write? You also need to understand, obviously, that you're then going to need to amend it. So if they reply back and they say, yeah, this referencing is missing a dot here, or you haven't capitalized here, you need that time to amend it. So not only are you waiting 3 days and then getting it back, you then need to have a day to amend it before you submit it. So even if you're using a platform where it's only a 1-day turnaround, you need to make sure you've still got like a full day. Or for example, if I go back to my, back in here to my calendar, you can see that this is due where I also have a Zoom. So I don't want this 1 day to be here because I'm trying to do a Zoom for another topic. And then this day I've got a Zoom and this assignment's due. This is a bit messy for me. So I really want to be having this amending day here. Worst case here where I've got one thing. So I still have that 1 day, and then that next same morning before it's due, if it's due at 5 p.m, midnight, whatever it is, I still have that full day plus an extra day. So I'd be aiming to have it back here, and this is my amending day. I'd be aiming to have these kind of 3 days as them returning it. But again, not everyone works on the weekends. ALC won't be, responding to a lot of these on the weekends. Other platforms will be, Studiosity, that kind of a thing. And you can certainly email ALC and ask about what are other options. They're the main two I use, ALC, Studiosity. Then the last step, submitting. You want to double check against your marking rubric, make sure you're on track. And this is why I try and leave like 2 or so days to kind of allow that amending stage, so that if I log into the marking rubric, I'm like, oh my God, it was meant to be 15 resources, not 10. And then I need to go back through and make sure I've actually gotten to that 15. Or if I need to make sure that I'm maybe aren't as clear on one of the requirements, and I need to kind of reword it so it's very clear that I'm answering the question. That's kind of what I do there. And then obviously I finally submit it. So you can see that that's broken down into a couple of Post-it notes. And what I used to do is I literally used to write this out, but I would make it a little bit more relevant to what I was actually doing. So, and I would give myself questions. How many resources? How much is the weight? like the weighting, so it's 50% or 60%. How many resources do I need? How can I lose marks? Understanding that, and I would pop that in. I would then pop in another one about watching the video. I would then pop in that I want to have 1, 2, 3, maybe a week, maybe some goals about when I want to have research, and I'd pop those in as tasks. So literally in my diary, I would then pop these in. I want to have a couple of days to submit, and I would pop that over that kind of that weekend or 2-day period before it's due. I want to have at least 1 day myself to review, if not a few, like 3 or so to 5 days, 3 working days for ALC to return it, or 3 days to utilize Studiosity. If I'm confused, I want to allow time to be confused. I want to get that breakdown done earlier, and I want the most amount of time to be on my draft. The typical guideline is whatever percentage is how many weeks you want to be doing, or you want to allow. So for example, if you have an essay that is worth 40%, you want 4 weeks. If you have an essay that is worth 50%, you want 5 weeks. That's the typical time frame, and that's why I try and get this understanding done as soon as the unit opens. I do this ideally in my first week. I do that for all the assessments. I understand all the assessments, so that if I then have a better understanding, so I can start planning things. I know that an essay has multiple steps with multiple time frames, and that if I really want to be hitting some high, like some distinctions and high distinctions, I need to have a good week at the end. Yeah, sure, it's due when it's due, but I want to have a week before to be able to get it reviewed and not lose silly marks on referencing, or not lose silly marks because I forgot to put a full stop or capitalize a reference. Happened before. I don't want to do that. So those are kind of a few ways to kind of break it down. This is your first step. If you're confused and you're not sure and you've got an essay, just start there. Log in, have a look, see if there's an info video. If not, pop it on the forum. Hey, a student mentor reference that sometimes there's a hint video or an info video or a walking us through. Is this going to be happening anytime soon? And then that might prompt them to set up an ALC Zoom session, or your peers would jump on board and be like, yeah, that's a good idea. Can we have a walkthrough? Or we're not quite sure of what you're actually asking. Do you mind providing an info Zoom or that kind of a thing? Or do you mind if we make a list of questions and pop them in here? Or can you kind of give us some direction? Not giving you answers, but kind of steering on the correct path so you know that you're on the right track and hitting what is being asked of you. If you're not sure, start there. Download your marking rubric, download the assessment tasks, understand what is being asked of you, and then start working backwards. Figure out when your submission date is, allow a full week for review, allow a full week for stress time, catch up time, smashing it out time, and then work backwards with your percentage. Something's worth 50%, try and give yourself 5 weeks. Something's worth 40%, try and give yourself that much time. Give yourself time to research, give yourself time to draft. That should be, like I said, majority of your time. Drafting that, reviewing it, taking time, maybe doing a paragraph at a time, that breakdown. That's what I try and do. And then you can kind of jump into a different unit, into a different lecture. Sometimes some just flow and it's easy. Others, really, it's not an interesting topic and you kind of have to smash it out. Good luck. It's okay. Essays are hard. I struggle with them. You've got this. Start with understanding. If you understand what's ahead of you, you can plan, you can, if things come your way and you decide to maybe put it off a little bit, you can at least understand how much work is going to be involved in that last week when you're trying to smash out the assessment. Hopefully you're not doing that. Hopefully you're trying to plan and set some study goals. And yeah, I would definitely work towards this kind of Postit note system if you're doing a written diary, or I would literally turn these into goals and pop that on your online calendar. That's what I do. And that's why I'm now starting to walk away with distinctions and high distinctions for my essays, which is what we all want. But yes, good luck, guys. Obviously, any questions, pop them down below. And if you need any help, ALC is around. That information is all down below for you, okay? Good luck.